They said I was too emotional to hold a scalpel. That my hand shook too easily. That I felt too much to make the hard calls. But nothing made my hand shake like watching my mother slip into unconsciousness while my father, her husband, stood between me and the only chance she had to survive. He looked me dead in the eye in front of a room full of staff and said, "You're not qualified to perform this." Not, "You shouldn't." Not, "We have someone else." Just that I wasn't enough. And the worst part? A part of me believed him. Because when someone you've spent your whole life trying to impress tells you you're not capable, it doesn't sound like criticism. It sounds like truth. Until the moment I walked into that ICU wearing my white coat and the nurse looked up from my mother's chart and said, "Dr. Lane, we've been waiting for you. You're the only one who can do this." And just like that, my hand stopped shaking. I know some people think trauma has to be dramatic, screaming matches, betrayal, abuse. But sometimes it's just a quiet dismissal from the one man whose approval you begged for. Sometimes it's your own father making you feel small enough to question your place in the very room you built your career for. But what happens when the room stops listening to him and starts listening to you? I hadn't set foot in this hospital in nearly 15 years, but the air hadn't changed. Still that same antiseptic sting, the faint burn of overboiled coffee, and the unshakable weight of ego. My heels clicked softly across the linoleum as I entered the lobby, the same one where my father once introduced me not as his daughter, but as the one who left. But this time, I wasn't here for a visit. I was here because my mother was in the ICU, unconscious, and her CT scan screamed urgency. And before I could even put on my coat, he was already there, arms crossed. Like a sentinel in front of the OR. "You're not qualified to be in that OR," he said. "This is family business, and for doctors who actually operate." The words hit me like cold steel. My coat stayed folded over my arm. My ID badge was still clipped to my purse. I stared at the man who once taught me how to suture on a banana. And now wouldn't even let me near my mother's chart. "I'm not here to play hero," I said. "I just want to help. We already have someone. Eric's handling it." Of course. Eric. My younger brother. Dr. Eric Lane. An orthopedic surgeon, decent, sure, but no background in neuro, no experience with craniotomies, and absolutely no training in basal ganglia bleeds. But he had something I never did. Our father's unwavering belief. Douglas Lane always saw Eric as the successor. The golden boy. I was the one who dared to leave the track he carved out for me. I was the one who turned down a rural family medicine post to study neuroscience at Sloan Kettering. He never forgave me for that. "She's my mother too," I said, softer now. Not begging. Just stating a fact that, for some reason, still needed to be said. Eric wouldn't meet my eyes. "You don't know how things work here anymore, Meredith. This isn't Boston. Let them. Let them do what they always do. Let them pretend they know better." But my fingers itched, not for a scalpel, but for data. I walked into the empty physician's lounge and opened my laptop. 2 clicks. That's all it took. My license was still valid in Ohio, even if my father liked to pretend it wasn't. I searched my mother's name. Evelyn Lane. 68, history of hypertension. Admitted 12 hours ago for acute disorientation and collapse. The scan loaded. Midline shift. Compression on the brainstem. Rising ICP. The plan Eric's team laid out? Superficial evacuation. It wouldn't touch the deeper bleed. If they opened her up like this, she wouldn't survive the table. Just then, a voice behind me, "Are you Meredith Lane?" I turned to find a nurse. Older. Sharp eyes. "You're the one from Sloan Kettering, aren't you?" I nodded. "We read about your work," she said. "You saved that little girl with the stem hemorrhage 2 winters ago, didn't you?" I didn't respond. Just stared back at the scan. At my mother's ventricles, compressed and screaming. And whispered, "If they touch her now, she's not coming back." The smell of stale coffee clung to the room like a second skin. Her chart blinked on the screen, no mention of the deeper bleed. No note about the shift. If they cut, they'd kill her. Eric wasn't trained for this. And my father? He'd let his own wife die before admitting I was more qualified. I'd seen this script before. I was 25 when I got the letter, full scholarship to Vienna, to the International Institute of Neurosurgery. Residency under Dr. Franz Kramer. A dream. I cried when I got it. I cried again when the offer was rescinded 3 weeks later. No explanation. It took me 6 months to find out why. My father had written to the board, behind my back, claiming I was emotionally unstable. That I cracked under pressure. That I shouldn't be trusted in high-stakes surgical environments. He stole that from me. I buried that memory. But now, sitting in this place, this time, it cracked open. A knock pulled me out of it. An older woman entered. Her badge said Grace Sullivan, RN. Your mother wanted you to have this, she said, handing me a worn envelope. She asked me to hold on to it. I don't think she ever had the courage to give it to you herself. Inside, the original Vienna acceptance letter. And beneath it, the letter my father had sent to destroy it. She had kept it. She saved everything, Grace said. Your articles. Graduation photos. That magazine interview. All of it. She was proud of you. But she stayed quiet. Because of him. My throat tightened. They're prepping her for surgery, Grace added. But something doesn't feel right. I sat motionless long after she left. The envelope like a loaded confession on the table. Outside, my mother's life moved toward a line she might not come back from. My father was already lining up colleagues. Eric was sharpening a scalpel. And the only person who had believed in me had done so in silence. I looked back at the scan. If they operated, she would die. This time, I couldn't let them write the ending. Later, I sat beside her hospital bed. Monitors blinking quietly. Her face pale, her breath shallow. Then her eyes opened. Meredith, she whispered. Her hand moved slightly. I took it. You came back, she said. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. What do you mean? I asked. But she just shook her head. Too weak. Her eyes glazed over. Mom, I said. Did you know about the Vienna letter? That Dad wrote it? A flicker of guilt passed across her face. Then she looked away. Slowly. Deliberately. And in that silence, I heard the answer. Later, as I adjusted her blanket, I saw something tucked beneath her pillow. Another envelope. Inside, yellowed clippings. A Globe article about my stem cell work. A journal photo from my microvascular study. She had saved everyone. Behind the clippings, another document. A consult report from 10 years ago. Signed by Douglas Lane. Diagnosis, benign positional vertigo. But I knew better. The symptoms, headaches, vision loss, weakness, those were early signs of vascular compression. Signs he ignored. He kept her care in-house. Controlled. He let it progress unchecked. Grace found me again. I kept that, she said. I knew something was wrong. But your mom asked me not to say anything. Until now. This wasn't just a misdiagnosis. It was calculated. And if he could do that to her, what had he ever truly valued? As I moved through the corridor, I heard Eric's voice behind the physician lounge door. We can't let it spiral. The Paris keynote is already circulating. A pause. If Cole goes public with the data set, the whole method looks compromised. My method. I stepped back before he could see me. My heart raced. Later, I found him outside the lounge. Busy day? I asked. He flinched. Just catching up. You sounded intense earlier. Just a consult. You don't usually speak in code during consults. He said nothing. I hope you're not letting Dad rope you into something that could hurt someone again. His jaw tightened. He walked away. Back in the office, I logged in using Mom's still valid admin credentials. Flagged communications. One stood out. Strategy to discredit ML anonymous account. Sent to Eric. Forwarded twice. I checked the Paris Congress site. My name's still listed. But now a red banner, allegation of data integrity breach. Verification required in 48 hours. My stomach sank. It wasn't true. But truth didn't matter when people whispered enough. At 3:17 a.m., my phone rang. France. I picked up, expecting the committee. Instead, Dr. Vanessa Cole. Her smile was polished. Corporate. Cold. Just a friendly clarification call, she said. You're with the committee? No. I'm advising partners on conflict of interest. We take data integrity seriously. Especially with reputations on the line. She leaned in. You remember Berlin? You buried me on stage. I didn't bury you, I said. You refused to see the method through. And there it was. And now she smiled like she held the scalpel, like she thought she could cut me out clean and sterile without getting her hands bloody. I'm in a position now to assess its long-term reproducibility, she said, smooth as silk, like this was just science, not sabotage. Especially now that your data is, let's say, under review. My hands curled into fists in my lap. Eric. I should have known. I wanted to make sure, she continued, like we were old colleagues catching up over coffee, that your talk in Paris doesn't spark unnecessary complications. And then she said it, my mother's situation. Like that name belonged in her mouth. Like it was a bargaining chip. What are you talking about? I asked, though I already knew. I felt it in the pit of my stomach. She smiled again. Oh, just a theoretical concern. For instance, if the press found out that a surgeon unlicensed in-state had intervened in her own mother's neurosurgery without proper written authorization, she let it hang there like smoke in the air. I imagine the board might find That, problematic, my voice dropped, sharp and cold. So you're threatening me? On behalf of a pharma group. Using falsified data my brother fed you. Vanessa tilted her head like she was studying me through a glass panel. I'm offering you a graceful exit, she said. You could deny it publicly, of course, but the documents we've gathered? Well, compelling. A few misaligned timestamps, one unsanctioned login, a file ID that matches your access credentials, all circumstantial, of course, she paused. But if you don't withdraw, and then that smile again, wide and wolfish, the committee may be forced to reevaluate your role. And if they find grounds for misconduct, the fallout might extend. Maybe even to your mother's care. I stared at her. A beat of silence passed between us. And then I said it, quietly. But with every syllable like a blade. You know what's worse than a false accusation? A threat delivered at the perfect time. And you, Vanessa? You just nailed the timing. Her smile twitched. And then the call ended. I didn't move. Not for a full minute. The silence felt like a second skin. But I didn't feel afraid. I felt furious. My phone buzzed. A new message. No name, no number. Just a subject line, you need to hear this. I pressed play. Eric's voice came through first. Low, clipped, surgical. If she overrides the order and performs even a single intervention, it's technically unauthorized. That's all we need. One sterile note and she's cooked, Vanessa's voice followed. Cool and bored. Perfect. Then I'll make the call. Just enough heat to make her sweat. Not enough to make her walk, another beat. We make her move. Then she takes the fall, the file ended. I sat there with the screen in my hand and betrayal pressed against my chest like a bone that wouldn't set right. Eric hadn't just gone along with it. He designed it. And Vanessa wasn't freelancing. This was coordinated, calculated. A scalpel cut to make me bleed just enough to disappear. The email came next. Subject, urgent ethics violation inquiry, immediate response required. The International Neurological Society. The message was sterile. They were requesting clarification on data inconsistencies related to my technique. A PDF report was attached. Stamped and signed by a supposed former collaborator of mine at Boston General. Except, I'd never worked with anyone by that name. He didn't exist. And yet, the signature matched one from a legitimate case file I submitted 2 years ago. Forged. Cleanly. Deliberately. Someone had manufactured an entire paper trail, complete with identity, to gut my credibility from the inside out. I didn't panic. Not at first. Instead, I went to the one person left who might still be on my side. Grace. I found her in the quiet corner of the nurse's station. Showed her the email. She didn't blink. Just nodded and said, "Give me 30 minutes. She traced the IP. The report had been sent from this hospital's server. I stared at the screen. Ohio. Not Paris. Not Boston. And the login credentials used? Eric's. The forged report had come from my own brother. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there in that supply closet, my body unmoving, as if betrayal had finally reached its saturation point. But then Grace handed me something else. Printed emails. A full thread. Accessed using old credentials from my mother's time on the ethics board. Eric and Vanessa. Page after page. Their language was clinical, but their intentions were venom. She won't back down, Vanessa wrote. But we don't need a scalpel to cut her out. We just need the world to believe she's compromised. That was the moment it hit me. They didn't need to prove I was wrong. They just needed the world to stop listening. Later that day, I walked into Harold Grant's office. He looked tired. Older than I remembered. I've read the report, he said. I've also seen the allegations going around online. They're fake, I said. That doctor doesn't exist, he didn't argue. I don't doubt you, he said. But the committee isn't built to handle this kind of controversy. And you've become polarizing, that word. Polarizing. It landed like a diagnosis. He folded his hands. They're asking you to step back from the keynote, I stood. You once told me that surgery was about courage, I said. About stepping in when no one else dares, his eyes dropped. Sometimes, he said, courage means knowing when to step aside. No, I said quietly. Sometimes it means knowing you're being shoved aside and deciding not to move. He didn't reply. And I didn't wait. That night, I returned to my mother's bedside. She hadn't woken yet. Monitors blinked and machines sighed, but she remained still. I sat beside her. Held her hand. They're trying to erase me, I whispered. They're saying I lied. That I faked the work that saved lives. You know who's helping them? Eric. Your son. And Dad, he's letting it happen. I looked at her, wondering if she could hear me beneath all that stillness. I stayed. Not for them. For you. Because I never left you. Not once. I found her phone. Scrolled through photos, old messages. Something to feel close again. That's when I found the video. Dated 6 years ago. I pressed play. It was my 2017 keynote. A shaky recording. But the voice behind the camera, it was hers. My mother's voice. Soft, whispered close to the mic. "She's so brilliant," she said. "Douglas will never admit it, but I know I didn't cry from vindication. I cried because she knew. She knew. And she never said it to my face. But she was proud of me. In silence. In secret. And maybe, for now, that was enough." Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Dr. Lane, my name is Clara Ewan. I'm a medical investigative journalist. I think you'll want to see this." I paused. Then replied. 2 minutes later, my inbox lit up with files. Attachments. Email screenshots. Timelines. Transcripts. Clara had followed the trail I couldn't. And what she found? Eric. Vanessa. And a pharma board. A whole campaign to destroy my credibility and protect their patents. "I plan to publish before the Paris conference," she wrote. "But I want your voice in it." I stared at that message. Then looked back at my mother. "They tried to silence me," I whispered. "But I'm going to make sure the whole world hears us." She didn't move. But somehow I knew she heard me. "Let me know when you're ready for the next part, I'll keep." The voice just as sharp, personal, and raw.